So after our diversion into John the Baptist's fate last week, our narrative now returns to Jesus and the apostles. 2 weeks ago, after Jesus had returned to his hometown, you might recall that Jesus had then sent the apostles out to proclaim repentance, cast out demons, and cure the sick. And so today they return, successful from their mission. They come back to Jesus and tell him all the exciting things they did on their adventures. Now have they not only seen the amazing things that Jesus could do, but they themselves accomplished these great deeds. So we come back from this flurry of activity and adventure and great accomplishments. And Jesus says, now it's time to come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while. We see this pattern continually in Jesus' ministry. Periods of activity, of service to others, and then periods in which he goes into the wilderness and rests. Take some time in the quiet to reflect on all that has happened and to discern what is next. We call this the renewal apostolate cycle. It's a cycle that Jesus invites us all to live into. Time for active ministry, our apostolate, us being apostles, and then that leads into time of rest, of renewal, which then leads us back into ministry. We have our own cups filled, and then we go out and fill the cups of others. It's a very human rhythm to life that Jesus is inviting us into. Perhaps the lectionary places this story right in the middle of the summer for a reason. A reminder that our vocation, our calling, is not merely to work. It is not only about being active and missional and successful, but to also at times come away to a deserted place, somewhere quiet, and simply be. To come to a place like this on a Sunday morning and be renewed. So that's what they intend to do. They get in a boat, Mark tells us, and they head out for a nice retreat. Of course, in this case, things do not go according to plan. The people notice that Jesus and the disciples are heading out, but they are desperate for help. They are so desperate that they actually beat the boat and arrive on the other side of the shore despite traveling by foot. And what does Jesus do in this case? We've seen how important it is for all of them to get some rest. They must have been exhausted. All that travel, and now so many people coming and going, they don't even have time to eat. But Jesus doesn't get irritated as he sees the great crowd now gathered at his vacation spot. Rather, we are told he looks on them in compassion. He has compassion for them because they are like sheep without a shepherd. Now, this phrase, they are like sheep without a shepherd, this is important. It's signaling something for us as the listeners to pay attention to. Because this image of the shepherd and the sheep is key for the people of Israel. If we look to our first reading today, Jeremiah, we see that shepherds represent both God and the kings of Israel. Jeremiah is decrying the inattentive shepherds who destroy and scatter the Lord's sheep. These are the corrupt and immoral kings who do not look after the poor, the widow, or the orphan. Their whole job is supposed to be these works of justice. To be a leader of Israel is to be called to structure their society on these principles of justice that come from God, that are meant to ensure the safety and prosperity of all of God's sheep. And so, these evil shepherds, Jeremiah says, they will be overthrown by God so that new shepherds can be raised up. And it is in this same vein that Jesus is now looking at the people with compassion. After all, who is the current shepherd of these sheep? Why, it's the current ruler of Israel, King Herod. And what have we just learned about King Herod last week? We've learned through the death of John the Baptist that King Herod is no righteous ruler. He is one of these shepherds whose only concern is his own power and his own wealth. This King Herod has let God's sheep be destroyed and scattered. And so, Mark tells us, God has now raised up a new shepherd for the people. A shepherd who looks with compassion on his people. A shepherd who, rather than holding a feast for Israel's elite, rather than holding these dances that lead to death, this shepherd instead gathers around himself the poor and feeds them. A shepherd who, rather than executing righteous prophets, instead heals the sick. And so we see in Jesus that promised day that Jeremiah describes. That day has come when the Lord will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he shall reign as king and deal wisely and execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved, and Israel will live in safety. For Jesus is our true shepherd, the one who leads us to still waters and revives our souls. And he is always there for you. You can race his boat to that shore of rest, And you can be assured that when he sees you, he will look upon you with compassion